All right. Good morning, everyone. Nice hat, Commissioner O'Connor. Fits. So good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our Committee of the Whole, our very first meeting as we start the new year of 2021. It's good to see you all again. I hope you were able to get some rest and rejuvenate over the holiday. I know we have a lot before us, not just this month, but in the upcoming year. So it's good to see you all. I would say similar to years past, actually, I believe our city manager started this new tradition when he first joined us as our city manager. So we've been doing this for a couple of years, and we're going to continue the tradition of kicking off the new year, reminding folks to pay a little bit more attention to our physical and emotional health. And so we're going to start today by turning over and starting our Committee of the Whole meeting with our Parks Director to talk about wellness and get us moving and starting the year off on a positive, healthy foot, should I say. So David Marquardt, you want to jump in here and take over our Committee of the Whole meeting and talk to us about the importance of focusing on wellness.
City Manager, I don't know if you wanted to start.
I'll go right ahead, David.
Very good. Well, it's a pleasure to be with all of you again. Thank you for this opportunity. If this is your first entrance back into fitness since last year, welcome back. It's good to have you with us. I'm very pleased to have two individuals with us today leading both the emotional aspect of our health and our physical health as well. And so Amy Kaweiser, she's been with us the last couple of years and leading us in fitness activities. She'll be with us again today. For those of you that follow Grand Rapids Magazine, you may know that Amy is listed among the ranks of the best in Grand Rapids for fitness. So we're really excited about that piece as well. And we're always very pleased to have our very own wellness coordinator, Jess Welch, leading the emotional health of things today. So Amy, take it away.
Thank you so much, David, for that wonderful introduction. You guys, I'm really excited. Like Mayor Bliss said, this is the third year that I've done this with you guys. So really excited to continue. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Yes? Okay. So I'm going to have you guys get out of your chairs. And we're going to move along together to a really uplifting song that I'm excited to lead you through. So I know you have very little space. You're all in your offices and you're not really able to move as much as we've been able to in the past, but just take as much room as you need or use what you have, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Before you start, we're going to invite the members of the other presenters or top management, the members of top management to also turn their cameras on as well.
All right. Cool. Are we good? Yes. I'm not super familiar with WebEx, so I just want to make sure we're good. Give me a thumbs up. Yes. All right. So let's get started. All right. Can you hear the music okay? Yes. Awesome. Okay. So we're going to start just with a sub-touch side to side. If you want, you can follow along with me or kind of do your own thing, whatever works for you. So start with a little shoulder roll. Back. Good. Let's go forward now. So nice big arms. Roll those shoulders. Good. Okay, let's reach it forward. Joel, this move is for you. The reach. I like to spread my fingertips out, really warm up the hands and the arms. Good. Okay, so now we're going to just take a little walk around your chair. Whatever space you got, walk with purpose. And then if you can change direction, go ahead and do that. Or keep going in the same direction. That works fine too. Good. Okay, let's step side to side. Reach those arms up. Big clap. Good. And give me a wave side to side. You got it. Looking good. Good. Okay, reach them up and over across the front of your body. You got it. Okay, so both hands this time pressing forward. Spread out the fingertips. Feel it in your feet all the way through. Okay, take that walk around again. Walk with purpose. You got it. I hope you guys like my makeshift fitness studio here. Take it around the other way. This is the space I teach in every single week for Parks and Rec. Thank you guys. That is your 2 minutes of fitness. Thank you so much for including me in this year. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and send it over to our wellness chick, one of my favorite parts of the Parks and Rec group, Jess Welch, who is going to take you through some breathing exercises. So yeah, take it away, Jess. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Amy. I love starting with that. I hope we were all able to laugh together, even if we can't be in a room together, to just get up and move. We know that moving our body feels good, right? And it doesn't just affect our physical space, but it also affects our mental well-being. I think in the past year, more than every other year of my lifetime, we've been made extremely aware of how important our mental well-being really is. And so this will not take the place of speaking to a counselor or a therapist, but I do want to just introduce or maybe remind you of a tool that you have at your disposal all the time that might be able to help and control your stress levels. So as we head into this meeting, I'm going to invite you into a moment of breath work or meditation. And if this is new for you, my hope is that it is not hard. All you got to do is breathe. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes briefly and just take some deep breaths in and out. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, whatever feels comfortable for you. Now I'll invite you into what's called measured breathing. You're going to inhale through your nose, filling your lungs for 4 counts. And when you fill your lungs, hold at the top for 5 counts. And then slowly exhale that breath through your mouth for 7 counts. Nice and slow. Go ahead and do that 2 more times for me. Filling your lungs through your nostrils for 4 counts. Holding for 5. And exhaling for 7. If that feels difficult for you, that's okay. Cut it in half. Just make sure that exhale is longer than your inhale. When you're done, go ahead and open your eyes. I hope that you feel the difference from when you sat down, and I hope you feel calmer. You can always return to your breath no matter what you're experiencing throughout the day. So thank you very much for your attention and for this moment, and I will turn it back over to you, Mayor Bliss.
Thank you, Jess, and thank you, Amy. I think, yes, we can all clap. I see the city manager doing that. What a great way to start our meetings in the new year. So especially in light of what turned out to be a rather stressful start of our year for many in our community and country. So thank you both for starting us off. Thank you, city manager, for starting this tradition. I know you do this and you focus on physical and mental health more than just the start of the year. You've done that since you've gotten here, and we really appreciate it. So commissioners, let's get started with our committee of the whole agenda today. We have a number of action items, and then we have 2 briefings. We have an update on our fiscal audit and our comptroller, Mr. Max France, will walk us through the CAFR. And then also we have Ms. Connie Bohach talking about the draft Regional Consolidated Housing and Community Development Plan. So with that, we'll start with the first item. This is a resolution deferring consideration of the status of existing social districts to the end of 2021. Can Can I get a motion?
So moved. Support.
All right, moved and supported. We have Mr. Canfield here with us today to tell us about this item. Lou, we can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
Mayor, while he prepares, I think he can go on maybe Mr. DeLong's computer, and if we can't hear him now, but I think the intent was we were due for an evaluation towards the end of the year of the effectiveness of social zones, but because we've had limited time since the onset to have enough information to do so, we were asking for deferment to get us through winter and another summer of it until the end of the year. Mr. Canfield, are you able to be on now? That's the intent of the item that we're bringing forward. We would like to defer till the end of December 2021.
Okay, thank you, City Manager.
And you have some information in your packet that has some additional preliminary feedback from the some of the activity within the social zones from DGRI, but we've not been able to do the evaluation of all of the areas outside of the downtown area as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think the memo was really clear that this extends that and that we'll be doing it at a later date. Lou, no, we still can't hear you. So you may need to find another computer real quick because you're up for the next one as well. So city commissioners, any questions or comments about this? It's pretty straightforward. No? Okay, seeing none, I'll turn to the city clerk to call for the vote.
Commissioner O'Connor,
Yes.
Commissioner Moody,
Yes.
Commissioner Sassi,
Yes.
Commissioner Repart,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes, it carries. Thank you, commissioners. Next, that will take us to a resolution recommending approval by the Michigan Liquor Control Commission of a social district permit application pursuant to Public Act 124 of 2020. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Support.
All right, moved and supported. Mr. Canfield, I see you're over in Mr. DeLong's office. You want to tell us about this one?
Can you hear me now? All right, thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulties. So this is the standard item that you've seen at least a half dozen prior meetings where a business that wishes to participate in a social district has to apply and then obtain your recommendation of approval to the Liquor Control Commission in order to obtain a social district permit, and then that allows them to sell alcoholic beverages in to-go containers for consumption within that district. This particular request is from the Arctos Meadery at 442 Bridge.
Thank you, Mr. Canfield. Commissioners, any questions about that? All right, seeing none, we'll turn to the city clerk to call for the vote.
Commissioner Moody,
Yes.
Commissioner Sassi,
Yes.
Commissioner Repart,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connor,
Yes.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes, it carries. Thank you. All right, next we'll go to a resolution approving the amended Tallmadge Township water rates in accordance with the 2020 water sewer rate review. Can I get a motion?
So moved. I'll move it.
Support. All right, moved and supported, and I believe we have Ms. Carter here to tell us about this.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mayor Bliss. This item is the resolution approving the amended water rates for the Tallmadge Township in accordance with the 2020 water rate review. These rates were approved by City Commission by resolution on December 15th, 2020. However, one adjustment is just needed. Because of the significant decrease in Tallmadge Township water rates, the existing formulas in the rate study also caused that change in commodity rate to influence the monthly meter charge and create a negative meter charge for meters over 2 inches. So we worked with the township supervisor and just made an adjustment to rebalance the distribution between the commodity and that monthly meter charge. So the adjustment has no impact on the revenue requirement for Talmadge Township or for the water system and does not impact user rates for any other partner communities. So the attached resolution just approves those amended water rates for that rebalance for Talmadge Township to be implemented January 1, 2021.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Carter. Yeah, pretty clear. This is an amendment, an adjustment to an item that we've already discussed in the past. So commissioners, any questions or comments about this? All right, seeing none, City Clerk, you want to call the vote?
Commissioner Sassi,
Yes.
Commissioner Repart,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connor,
Yes.
Commissioner Moody,
Yes.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes, it carries. All right, next that will take us to a resolution establishing an obsolete property rehabilitation district pursuant to PA 146 of 2000 for 730 Leonard Street Partners, LLC at 730 and 736 Leonard Street Northwest. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Support.
All right, moved and supported by our first ward commissioners. So commissioners, this is a project that we heard about in the economic team. And then we also had a public hearing related to this item last month. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Gracia to share a little bit more information and allow us to ask any questions we may have.
Yes, Mayor. Just one quick note, items 4 and 5 are related to the same project, so I will not have any further comments after the introduction of the second item 5. So again, on the December 15th commission meeting, we had a public hearing for this project at 730 and 736 Leonard Avenue. Again, it's a $2.5 million rehabilitation of a mostly vacant building. They will retain an existing business there and add 18 studio.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gracia, I was going to interrupt you because I was hearing some background noise. I don't know if from you or from someone else, but if you're not speaking, if you can go on to mute and then hopefully we can, it almost sounds like a squeaking noise. So hopefully we can get rid of that. So I'll mute and turn it back over to you and hopefully it's correct.
Sure. Is that still okay?
Much better. Okay.
Yep.
So that is 18 studio and 1-bedroom apartments. It does have support of the West Leonard Business Association, the West Grand Neighborhood Association, and the West Side CIA. And notably, this project intend to achieve 15% MLBE and WBE or MBE participation in the construction of this project. So I can answer any questions.
And Mr. Gracia, maybe for those watching, if you could just also talk about what an OPRA is and why this project qualifies for an obsolete property rehabilitation district, which is different than some of the other incentives like the brownfield.
Yeah, so the OPRA Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Project is a tool that is available for basically buildings that have been rendered obsolete and need significant investment in order to be redeveloped. And so that we can take that and provide up to a 10-year tax abatement, essentially. And in this case, we're going 12 because the participant is participating in a LEED and net zero carbon efficiency that allows to go for the extra 12 years. And so really the reality is this is the impetus for the development to happen on a really obsolete building. And then the city assessor does officially designate the facility as functionally obsolete to allow this financing to take place.
Thank you, that's helpful. All right, commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, I'll turn to our city clerk to call the question.
Commissioner Repart,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connor,
Yes.
Commissioner Moody,
Yes.
Commissioner Sassi,
Yes.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes, it carries. All right, and that will take us to our 5th item, and this is a parallel or companion resolution approving a 12-year obsolete property rehabilitation exemption certificate pursuant to PA 146 of 2000 for the same property and project located at 730 and 736 Leonard Street Northwest. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Support.
All right, moved and supported. Commissioners, any final questions or comments about this project? All right, I'll turn to our city clerk to call for the vote.
Commissioner Lanier,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Connor,
Yes.
Commissioner Moody,
Yes.
Commissioner Isasi,
Yes.
Commissioner Repart,
Yes.
Mayor Bliss.
Yes, it carries. All right, commissioners, that will take us to our briefings for today. We have two important briefings before us. The very first one is related to our fiscal 2020 audit wrap-up. So we're going to turn to our city comptroller, Mr. Matt France, and we'll let him walk us through this, and we'll be able to answer or ask any questions that we may have after his presentation. Mr. France?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and good morning, Commissioners. So I'm here to present to you today a few items related to our fiscal year 2020 year-end financial results, as well as the audit. In a few moments, I'll ask the Plant Moran team to join us, and they can talk about some of the audit work that was completed and also discuss the opinion that they issued the City of Grand Rapids this year. After they give that overview, I will share with you some of the highlights from our comprehensive annual financial report this year. But I will do that by taking you through our newly designed Citizens Guide to the City Finances. So looking forward to sharing that. And with that, I would like to introduce you to Bill Brickey, a partner at Plant Moran.
Thank you, Max. Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Bill Brickey with Plant Moran, one of the audit partners on your account. And also with me today is Marie Stiegel. She's one of our audit managers. And we're here to talk about the audit, the results of the audit for the June 30, 2020 year end. Just a reminder, the deliveries that come out of the audit, obviously there's the financial statement, the comprehensive annual financial report, which I'm sure you received. We've also issued two reports to Mayor and the City Commission, one on the audit process itself and one on the internal control assessment that we did for the city. We also issue 7, I'll call them side financial statement reports on several of the component units and joint ventures for the City of Grand Rapids. And then finally, we're in the process of completing the audit of your federal grants. That report is due March 31st, and we expect to issue that report in the next few weeks. We have covered all of these deliverables in detail with management, and our goal today really is to provide a summary of the audit results in this meeting. Before we get started, I want to make sure and thank your entire finance team for their assistance throughout the audit. As you can imagine with the pandemic, it was certainly an unusual year for the audit and required, I guess, some creative thinking on their part and our part to get the audit done in a timely fashion. But your team was very cooperative, and we appreciate the efforts that they put in to help us complete the audit efficiently. I want to start off just by commenting on our main deliverable to you, which is included in the CAFR on page 1 and 2, and that's our opinion on your financial statements. The city did receive an unmodified audit opinion in the current year, which basically means the financial statements are in compliance with all the rules and regulations. I also like to point out that the city does continue to prepare that comprehensive annual financial report, which is more than required by the state of Michigan. So to me, having this, I'll say, enhanced financial document really just shows your commitment to overall transparency and quality financial reporting. So the next thing I'd like to do is as I mentioned, we did issue 2 separate reports to the Mayor and City Commission on the audit process, and I'm going to have Marie walk us through the highlights of those communications.
Mayor, I can't hear anything. I'm not sure if it's on my end or Marie's.
Yeah, I can't hear anything either.
Bill, can you see, I see that Maria is on.
Yes. Let me check with her real quick.
No,
We still can't hear her.
no, so can't hear you, Mary.
Max, do you have another portion of the presentation that you can present now, or can you summarize? Or
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you again this year. As Bill mentioned, there are 2 attachments in your packet that I will cover this morning. The first is it's called the City of Grand Rapids End of Audit Letter to the City Commission. I believe it starts on page 38 of your packet. So this letter contains 2 sections: required communications between the auditor and the commission, as well as legislative and informational items. So page 2 of this document, which is your packet, page 39, really begins the required communications between the auditor and the commission. Much of this letter contains language that's required by the auditing standards, but I wanted to point out items more specific to the city. First, the internal controls of the city were considered as part of the audit. Any reportable items related to internal controls are discussed in a separate letter, which I will cover next. Starting at the bottom of page 2 of this letter, we discuss any sensitive estimates that impact the financial statements. So there are certain estimates that are required to prepare the city's CAFR, and the most sensitive of those that are identified in this letter are those impacting costs that have been incurred but not paid, as well as the estimates that go into calculating the net pension and other post-employment benefit or OPEB liabilities. We reviewed these estimates as part of the audit, and we note that they are reasonable in relation to the financial statements. There's just a couple comments in this letter that we note related to these estimates specifically. The first is that we just continue, this is a comment that we've had in the past, we just continue to recommend that the city evaluate the long-term rate of return that's used as an estimate that goes into the OPEB liability calculation. There's obviously many factors that go into this liability that can vary from year to year, so it's just continue to monitor that is a critical part of that estimate, and that is being monitored, and we just continue to stress that. In addition, we did note that during the fiscal year, the city changed claim processors for the healthcare costs, and we recommend that certain estimates used in preparing the financial statements related to the amount incurred but not paid be reevaluated as new data comes in related to this new processor on how fast those are being paid on a go-forward basis. The bottom of page 3 of this letter indicates that there were certain misstatements identified as part of the audit. These will be covered in just a minute as part of the second letter related to internal controls. Before I get to that, I just wanted to note, starting on page 5 of this letter, we do include various legislative and informational items, which I won't cover in detail, but they are provided for your information. There's a variety of information in this section of the letter related to Michigan CARES Act funded grant programs, cybersecurity, and upcoming accounting pronouncements. I will note that there are a few significant accounting pronouncements that the city will need to implement over the next 2 years. We have already been working with the city to provide various information, tools, and access to our webinars to help with this process, and we will continue to provide assistance as needed moving forward. With that, I'll move on to the second attachment in your packet, which is titled the Report to the City Commission or the Internal Controls Letter, and this really starts on page 46 of your packet. As I mentioned earlier, there were certain reportable items related to internal controls that are discussed in this letter, and those really begin on page 3 of this letter or page 50 of your packet. There was one reportable item related to internal controls that related to year-end journal entries that were identified during the audit process. So really under the auditing standards, we are required to report to you if certain entries are identified as part of the audit process, if the dollar amounts are significant enough or they could be significant. And this is why these items are being reported to you today. The entries I will cover were related to year-end reporting, so they wouldn't have had an impact on the day-to-day accounting functions, and they were related to some unusual circumstances this year. So I'll just run through these very quickly. First, there was an adjustment to a recorded liability within the Downtown Development Authority, and that related to the school tax capture. This is really a result of a departure of a key individual who generally calculated this liability. And I will note that it did not impact any amounts paid to the schools. It was really, as I mentioned, the year-end liability that was recorded. So that resulted in an adjustment. Second, there was an adjustment to the recorded estimated income tax refund liability. Again, a unique circumstance here, but the estimate was adjusted due to new information related to the expected impact of COVID restrictions and certain employees' ability to work within the city. So that was adjusted and reevaluated as part of the audit. In addition to these entries, the city also identified a capital asset that was recorded many years ago within the Tax Increment Financing Authority that really, after information was dug up from those many years ago, it really should have been within the city's capital assets instead. So this was adjusted and it shows up as a restatement of the beginning of the year equity amounts to reflect that it was from a prior period. There were two additional non-material entries related to estimates of unbilled water and sewer and miscellaneous revenue, which again were year-end reporting items only. So just to provide some context on this reportable item, the dollar amount of these collective entries resulted in the required reporting of these items within this letter to you today. However, as I mentioned, they do solely impact year-end reporting, not day-to-day functions, and there were some unique circumstances bringing them about. The city processes, tens of thousands of entries during a fiscal year, and as you can see, this represents a very limited number of those entries. So with that, we're happy to, with your permission, open it up for any discussion or questions that you may have for us at this time. As Bill mentioned, and in closing, I would like to also thank the city staff for their assistance during the audit process. Especially this year, the audit was completed entirely on a remote basis, given the circumstances. And so I'd especially like to thank Ruth Luders, Erica Bills, Tricia Chapman, and others within the comptrollers and fiscal services who really head up this effort and put in a lot of work related to the audit. So again, with your permission, I'd be happy to open it up for any discussions or questions that you might have.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for either Bill or Marie or Max? All right, let's start with Commissioner Moody and then Commissioner Lanier.
Thank you so much for this report. I really appreciate it. If you could just go back over one more time for me, our invested interest with the school system. You mentioned that nothing was changed.
You're referring to the entry, just so I am answering a question related to the Downtown Development Authority.
No, you mentioned the Grand Rapids Public School System in reference to our relationship with them. And you said nothing financially was changed. And I just wanted to have you go back over that again because I wasn't sure what I heard.
Okay, yeah. So the item that I mentioned, there is as part of the Downtown Development Authority's financial records.
Excuse me, there's a lot of noise in the background. It's not like somebody's scratching something. I'm not sure what it is. That makes it difficult for me to hear sometimes.
Is that better? Sounds better. Yep. Okay. I think the item you're referring to, and after I answer it, let me know if I didn't address your question, but Within the Downtown Development Authority, they capture various taxes related to other taxing authorities, so the county, as well as the schools. And there is an associated liability recorded in the Downtown Development Authority for the amount of the school tax that they aren't allowed to capture, because there are various limits on what they can capture from the schools. That liability is calculated based on a form that's completed each year to calculate what that amount should be. And due to the departure of that key individual that generally calculated that amount, the liability was not changed from the previous year. So there was just an adjustment related to that, but the amount paid, the liability is just, you know, what, it wasn't actually what was paid out. The amount paid out would have been properly calculated based on when the form was filled out. The entry just related to the liability at the year-end financial reporting. So it didn't impact a payment.
Thank you. Commissioner Lanier?
Yes, thanks. That actually was one of my questions. The other thing I was going to ask is for our comptroller, this is your first paper, and I'm just curious to know what was your experience going through this audit, and it's apparent that there were some elements changed in the community report. I'm curious what were some of the other changes that you made or believed to be in place going forward.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Commissioner. I think I can touch on some of that when I review some of the CAFRA highlights here in a few moments by taking you through the Citizens Guide, which did significantly change this year. As far as the CAFRA goes, overall format, this is very similar and consistent to prior years. There's a lot of regulatory guidelines you have to follow in producing this. So the CAFR, the big book, very, very little change overall there, with the exception of some comments and remarks in the introductory section. The big changes we really implemented this year were with the Citizens Guide and how we are summarizing the contents of the CAFR for the public.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right, Commissioners, any other questions or comments? All right, then I'll turn it back over to our City Comptroller, Mr. Max Grants, to walk us through the next portion.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And also a big thanks to Plant Moran for their partnership on the audit and continuing to help us identify opportunities and make improvements. Really appreciate their partnership. Do we have someone pulling up the Citizens Guide? Great, thank you. So I know many of you are familiar with this report that the city's been producing and our department is producing for a few years now. Ultimately, the Citizens Guide to the City Finances is a high-level summary capturing the main information presented in the comprehensive annual financial report. It is meant to remove some of the technical barriers or accounting background that you might need to really read through and fully kind of decipher what's in the CAFR. So we took a fresh approach to the format and flow of this presentation this year. And so I'm going to take you through that, and that will also share some of the key information that we have in the CAFR. So if we could please go to the first slide. We can skip over the introduction and table of contents. So one thing we wanted to do was that we recognize people have, limited time. And so if you wanted to learn about your government's finances, just one page, this is where I'm going to direct you. Page 1 of the Citizens Guide to the City Finances. This page contains 8 high-level items that are supported by accompanying pages throughout this presentation that provide a bit more context in detail. But if you just wanted to look at one page, you could immediately get a good feel for the city's revenues, expenses, how that impacted their net position for the year or their overall total difference between assets and liabilities, information on where the general fund balance ended up at year end, overall outstanding debt that the city holds, as well as some information on the longer term obligations that we have via pensions and other post-employment benefit obligations. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to go through some of these contents at a high level, which again, from that first slide, just provides a bit more context and detail. So this first slide is on city revenues, showing people where the city sources its money from. And, you know, you can quickly see on here some high level comments. Around 80% of that comes from income taxes, property taxes, and some of the charges for services. And then we have some information on the year over year change there. Next slide, please. Very similar format for city expenses. So that revenue we take in, then how do we spend it? Again, kind of applying the 80-20 rule, we can look at the pie chart or read a quick sentence that just says, you know, 80% of the city's expenses are in these few areas: public safety, public works, sewage disposal, water supply, and general government. And then again, just kind of a breakdown of those expenses for fiscal year 2020. Next slide, please. So this is a new slide that we introduced to the Citizens Guide this year, which expands upon the expenses slide. The city, of course, partners and relies on a variety of vendors and other organizations to procure goods and services and to help us complete projects. So what we did here is we just published a list that showed some of those vendors and organizations that are the top recipients of city funds. So the top one on the list is driven by largely work related to the biodigestion project. Next slide, please. So this is a slide, again, on the net position, showing kind of the year over year change where we were at the beginning of the year. And then as revenues exceeded expenses in the year, impacted and increased our net position at year end of $760 million, which largely reflects the difference between the city's total assets and total liabilities. And we give some examples there in the description so the reader can get an idea of what some of those major items are. Next slide, please. So this is the dedicated slide on the general fund. Similar to the other slides, gives some information on the sources of its revenue and its expenditures, and then also breaks down the total general fund balance of $64.2 million by the individual components. The unassigned balance of $37 million at year end is, of course, the amount that people are particularly interested in seeing. And then we also put some examples on there so people can get an idea kind of what those fund balance components mean. Like, what does, you know, non-spendable fund balance mean? Well, that's, you know, tied up in assets like inventory that are non-spendable. We did make one comment on here because there was a great deal of public interest in police department expenditures this year. And I would like to quick read that here for you. But what we did, and again, I want to invite you to kind of step outside the context of budget, because we are purely looking at the city's actual expenditures. And so fiscal year 2020, the police department expenditures of $54 million equated to approximately 38% of total fund expenditures. That's just kind of looking at, you know, the raw math. But, you know, as we were kind of looking at these numbers this year and having conversations, we realized that over the course of many years, and even going back to 2005, that there have been several operations and departments that have been removed from the general fund over the years for good reason, to help improve transparency and more isolated accounting around those departments. But however, that has had the impact of reducing the overall base of general fund spend, so therefore increasing the percentage share of any other department in there, like the police department, for example. So if you normalize for some of those changes from departments and operations that have been stripped out of general fund over the years, normalizing that would equate the police department expenditures to approximately 34%. That's just some financial analysis saying if you never made those changes, that's what the actual percentage would be. So we just wanted to provide some additional insight analysis there behind those expenditures. Next slide, please. So this is a dedicated slide on the city's debt. So as of fiscal year end, the city had $538 million in debt outstanding. Again, another slide where we took a really new approach to this year because, you know, all this detail is in the CAFR, of course, but we think there's value in sharing this with the citizens as well. The city issues different types of debt. There are bonds outstanding that are backed by taxpayer related revenue. And then there are also bonds outstanding that are backed by some of the business type activities that the city conducts, which generate user fees. And so we wanted to show the clear distinction there between those two different types of debts. And most of that, of course, is business type debt. But now those, you know, charts there that we put, the idea here was that, you know, like thinking kind of as a citizen, like, you know your annual income, you know, if you go out and take a mortgage and borrow debt, you know what percentage that monthly principal and interest payment is going to equate to in terms of your overall income. So that's exactly what we were doing here for these debts outstanding. We were just trying to show the total amount of principal and interest payments relative to the revenues related to those funds, so people could get some more context around how much of the debt, the payment and principal interest is as a percentage of revenue. Next slide, please. So this is a slide on the city's longer-term pension and OPEB related obligations. This just gives some high-level information on the number of plans and the participant, retired and current employees that are using these benefits. The total plan liabilities related to all these plans are approximately $1.2 billion. The plan assets around $900 million. And so that net difference between the two creates that $292 million liability, which at the end of the day equates to a weighted average across all those pension OPEB plans of 76%. So now if you look at the individual plans separately, the funding percentages are different. The pension plans are better funded than the OPEB plans, but that detail is contained in there. And the important thing I would note that while there's, I think, a varying degree of opinions out there in terms of what constitutes the right funding level for these plans, we're happy to note that all the city's funding percentages exceed the state's minimum threshold of classifying something as underfunded. We do not fall into that territory. Next slide, please. So we just have some supplemental slides here that we wanted to incorporate this year. You know, obviously the comprehensive annual financial report is really helpful, but there's other departments in the city that publish some really great reports to the public, and we wanted to make sure that people have quick access to those. I often remind people that the Comptroller's Department publishes the CAFR, and we're looking, you know, in the past, the prior fiscal year. But if you want to see what the city is going to be spending on in the next, you know, 12 to 36 months, make sure to check out, you know, the city manager and CFO's fiscal plan. Also, the Grand Rapids Police Department publishes a great annual report on some of their activity. And then also we have some new information available from Mr. Davis's department, Office of Oversight and Public Accountability. So we encourage, you know, the public to check out those other reports. Next slide, please. And then the final slide here is just general information on the government, just similar to what's been in the Citizens Guide in the past, just formatted a little differently. And there's some detailed in the appendix, but we don't need to go into those. So that is kind of the redesigned Citizens Guide this year. We hope it's you know, well received as in kind of an improved flow, and that is also, you know, if I were to take you through page by page of the CAFR, those are some of the same important numbers I would call out and cover. So happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, City Comptroller. So I don't know if we can take this presentation down so that I can see everybody. There we go. So I'll start. So first off, thank you for walking us through that. I find it really easy to understand and navigate. I know that when we interviewed you for this position, one of your top priorities was to create a CAFR that people could more easily understand and access, and to kind of take all the bureaucratic speak that we so often see in audits and in our budget and make it easy to digest for everyone in our community. So thank you for your work on this. And my question, and then I'll turn it over to colleagues, is I'm curious how this information will be shared with residents. I know in the past we always had a hard copy as well as a electronic copy. So I'm just curious what your plans are to disseminate this to make sure that people know it's available.
I can provide one quick comment on that, Mayor. We are doing a press release related to this, and we did do a brief promotional video. So that will likely be going out this afternoon or tomorrow. So that will be one way to help get visibility around the report. It, of course, will be published on the comptroller's website. And I also had a conversation with Becky Joe, and it sounds like she might be able to make this visible temporarily on the city's main webpage as well. So I don't know exactly what that's going to look like visually, but those are a few ways, and open to any other ways that people suggest for how we could distribute this and get as many eyes on it as possible.
Great, thank you. All right, commissioners, questions or comments? Commissioner O'Connor?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thanks to Max, our comptroller, for his continued work to improve ease of understanding for our residents and our taxpayers. This Citizens Guide is really a great document, but he at every meeting when he provides his report, he's going to put forth lots of information about the city that's easy to understand and very digestible, and I think has helped improve the transparency of our organization. So I just appreciate his efforts and look forward to continuing to get these reports and to help people better understand how we work as government.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Isasi?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll add my thanks to Mr. Comptroller. The one thing that I was that was the question I had, Mayor, was how else could we disseminate this information? And so if we could do a meeting with our Neighborhood Association Council, so if we could coordinate that with Mr. Eatman, I think that would be very helpful. And then I think as we get into the budgeting cycle, maybe doing another reminder of this or something else, because I think, we're kind of here at the beginning of the year. Some of us have been off. Some people are maybe not quite focusing on. So if at other points we could bring it into the conversation for other stakeholders, residents, neighbors, et cetera, business owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Very good recommendation. And I'll just trust that Mr. France will follow up on that. Commissioners, any other questions or comments? All right, I know we all have been given a copy of this, and so feel free to share with your networks. Commissioner Moody, did you have your hand up?
No, I was just gonna ditto. This was the since I've been on this commission, this report is really, really fantastic. It's broken down and it's simple and it's easier to comprehend. So I just want to thank everyone who had a hand in putting this Citizens Guide to the city's finances together. It's more opening and understanding for me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Lanier?
I was going to say something very similar, thanking the comptroller for the guide and to his entire team for all of the work that went into putting a document together that is easy for the end user. So thank you.
Yeah, well said, Commissioner. All right, any other questions or comments? City Manager, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, I too wish to lend my thanks to our comptroller for the work that he's done. He's been very transparent. He's been very collaborative, and I appreciate the work as well as the support from our CFO in making sure that they have unfeathered access to all the information that's needed to produce the reports to the public. So my appreciation to them both.
Thank you. Max, any final thoughts before we finish up this briefing?
Real quick, thank you all, for going through it and for the positive feedback. We really appreciate that. I will be sure to share that with the team. There's, of course, a few people that do a lot of heavy lifting related to the CAFR and the audit and this work each year. But every person in one way or another is either directly or indirectly contributing to these reports, and that even expands beyond our own department. So just want to say thank you to all the staff that helped produce this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, commissioners, that will take us to our final item before us today, and that is another briefing update on the draft fiscal 2021-2025 National Consolidated Housing and Community Development Plan. So with that, I think I'll start with our city manager, and he can introduce Ms. Connie Bohach, who will walk us through this, and we'll be able to ask any questions we may have. So city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and Happy New Year, Commissioner. I didn't say that earlier. Happy New Year to everyone. Mayor, we wanted to be as transparent as possible with all of our housing efforts. We know that we have a shortage of housing supply in the city and the need to increase support for people who live in substandard housing as well as the unhoused community. And I thought it would be appropriate to take a longitudinal approach in discussing some of the strategies that we are intending to use some of our federal resources for over the next 5 years. This is a collective view that we're taking along with Kent County, but I think it would be good for the public to understand opportunities for them to participate. And Ms. Bohach has worked with her staff to explain to outline our upcoming solicitation process for proposals in which community might help us resolve some of these issues. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Bohach.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So really this presentation really provides an overview of the Regional Consolidated Housing and Community Development Plan, which is in draft form right now, as well as walking through how it connects to housing and community development needs over a 5-year period, and how we will invest resources that we obtain from the federal government during that 5-year period. And as Mr. Washington indicated, this Consolidated Housing and Community Development Plan has been completed in partnership with Kent County. This is our second time that we have done a 5-year plan in collaboration with the county. So it can be viewed as a regional plan, although we have our own separate sort of components and process that we do individually within the guidance of that plan. Are my slides up? Thank you. If you could advance to the next slide. So just to really understand what is an HCD plan, it serves as a strategic planning tool to address housing and community development needs and priorities. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development requires us to have this 5-year plan to obtain community development block grant, home investment partnerships, and emergency solution grants funds that we receive from the federal government on an annual basis. So in essence, Congress appropriates funding on an annual basis, and this plan is submitted to help identify what our strategy is in making those investments during that 5-year period. This particular plan covers the period of July 1, 2021 through June 30th of 2026. And in totality, between Kent County and the city, guides investment for more than $40 million. That's anticipated because again, it's based on what Congress appropriates on an annual basis for each of those 3 programs. So we anticipate that Grand Rapids may receive approximately $27 million, and Kent County may receive $14 million. Next slide. In order to develop the draft plan, Kent County and the city contracted with Community Planning Insights to help us obtain input and to assess what community needs and priorities were to incorporate into the plan to develop our strategies. The tools that were used were focus groups, public forums, and a survey. 9 focus groups were held, both related to specific to City of Grand Rapids entities, as well as those within villages and townships. Emphasis in those sessions were equity and inclusion, affordable housing, and fair housing needs and priorities, homelessness and special needs housing, and other things that may affect villages and townships. The public forums, there were 10 sessions held in which half of those sessions were in Spanish. And again, they were targeted for specifically to Grand Rapids residents as well as Kent County residents. So some separate sessions for those. And then we also conducted surveys that we advertised through direct mail, social media accounts, Facebook's advertisements, and as well as general publications of print. Next slide. In formulation of the needs and prioritizations through that process, we've summarized the sort of top priorities in the following 5 categories: affordable housing, housing services, economic development, public infrastructure, and public services. Affordable housing continues to be a high demand, as over 32% of Grand Rapids households were identified as experiencing housing cost burden, with 17% falling within the severely cost burdened category. So construction of affordable rental and for sale housing, as well as permanent supportive housing development was highly desired. Housing services, the 3 top areas there were owner-occupied home repair, rental payment assistance, as well as down payment assistance for home buyers. Economic development focused on job opportunities and training, small business loans and grants, as well as technical assistance services for those same entities. Public infrastructure, there was a focus on improved internet access, street improvements, and park improvements. I would say that the internet access rose to the top and probably is a indication of some of the things that people are experiencing with the pandemic, with children at home and learning environments. And that's new information that we obtained through this process. Public services, childcare, medical mental health services, emergency payment assistance, activities for youth, and crime prevention and education rose to the top. Childcare and mental health services and emergency payment assistance were highly desired, and this too is a bit new in terms of priorities that we've identified over the years of rising to the top, and is likely a result of the pandemic, which just continues to highlight the need for supports in this area as we move forward. Next slide, please. In the development of the draft plan, we not only take into consideration the direct input that we receive, but also look at a variety of other plans that are available in the community and the data that's contained within those. So we try to align as closely as possible and bring those elements into this plan. So we looked at the City of Grand Rapids strategic plan, the Bowen National Research on housing needs assessment that was conducted, the Housing Next housing needs and opportunities recommendations, the K-Connect project, redefining the path home, Housing Now data compendium for informed housing policy, and also the Great Housing Strategies from 2015. So all of those plans were again reviewed and tied in where it was appropriate within the context of this consolidated plan. Next slide, please. So the document is quite lengthy. There's a lot of information in it, and but we need to get down to how do we invest our resources during this 5-year period, and we focus on outcomes for investment, and we have identified 8 outcomes. Some of them have the same wording as in previous plans, and some of them are new. One thing to take note of is that in past years, so outcome number 1, for example, is prevent and resolve episodes of homelessness. That is primarily supported through our Emergency Solutions Grants Program. And that process was done, the investment process was not contained within the neighborhood investment plan. Because of the heightened focus on issues related to homelessness and the prevention of homelessness, we thought it was ideal to make sure that our neighborhood investment plan, that all of the outcomes were contained within that plan. So outcome 1, through ESG funding support, would be included in our process. So again, the 5-year investment outcomes, there's 8 of them. The first one is prevent and resolve episodes of homelessness, which is really intending to maintain or obtain stable housing stability for families and individuals that may be experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. Outcome 2, to improve access to and stability of affordable housing, really trying to focus on services that allow folks to remain stably housed or gain access, equitable access to housing. So you can see some of the activities that are identified relate to services related to fair housing and housing related legal services, things of that nature. Outcome number 3, increase the supply of affordable housing, really focuses on the actual units themselves, the creation or rehabilitation of affordable units to make sure that we have ample supply within our community. Outcome 4, improve the condition of existing housing, focuses on retaining quality housing in our community through maintenance, repair, and improvement of our housing stock. Next slide, please. Outcome 5 is somewhat new, a new focus to foster engaged, connected, and resilient neighborhoods, really focusing on activities that build relationship, lift resident voice, and enhance neighborhood stability. Some of the examples of activities of community organizing and educational referral services, as well as things that will promote equitable development. Outcome 6, improve community safety, support efforts that enhance the safety and quality of life in our neighborhoods. Outcome 7, improve economic opportunity. Here we're really hoping to focus on equitable economic prosperity that emphasizes improving financial and social capital. Some examples of that are job readiness and skill development programs, as well as technical assistance for micro-enterprise businesses. Outcome 8, enhance neighborhood infrastructure, which is intended to improve the physical infrastructure and create a sense of place within neighborhoods and neighborhood business corridors. Next slide, please. The HCD plan has to be approved by our city commission and submitted to HUD submitted to HUD for approval. The plan itself was made available on January 4th to the public, and a public hearing has been scheduled in front of the city commission on January 26th. There is a comment period that will end on February 2nd. So during this time frame, you can either the public is encouraged to come to the city commission to make any comments about needs and prioritization and any other elements of the plan at the public hearing, or to provide written comments directly to the community development department. The draft plan is available on our website, which is www.grcd.info, and written comments can be provided to the address that's identified here in the slide, communitydev@grcity.us. If there's any questions about the plan, any content in the plan, or what the plan really means, we encourage folks to call the Community Development Department at 616-456-3677. And Kent County, keep in mind again, this is a joint plan, a regional plan. Kent County will be going through the same process where they have a comment period as well, and they will be taking it to their Board of Commissioners to seek approval. Our timeline anticipated to bring back to the City Commission for approval is February 9th to be able to move forward then with this plan for the next 5 years. Next slide, please. The next sort of stage, when you look at a 5-year plan, again, you can consider that to be somewhat of a master plan related to your investments over that 5-year period. On an annual basis, we're required to submit to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development an annual action plan. And that serves as our application for those dollars that we receive through the Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnerships, and Emergency Solutions Grants programs. The funds that we receive on an annual basis, we actually have to apply for them. And this annual action plan serves as that application. And it basically identifies projects and activities that are carried out July 1 through June 30th each year of that 5-year plan. The city accomplishes that process to what we refer to, we consolidate all that information that's in that big document, the HCD plan, into what we call the Neighborhood Investment Plan. So that ties back to that plan and basically covers those 5-year investment outcomes. So the 8 outcomes that we just previewed are how we will focus investments and the solicitation of applications to address those 8 outcomes for our investment process. Next slide, please. And as the city manager mentioned, we are getting started on that annual allocation process that would be for projects that would start July 1 of 2021 and run through June 30th of 2022. And it's a 2-step process that we use. There's a notice of intent to apply. That first phase allows us to seek information for those who are interested in applying, agencies or nonprofits or other entities that are interested in proposing a project that would address at least one of the 8 outcomes identified in the Neighborhood Investment Plan. And allows us to look at, determine whether or not we can legally contract with the agency if they've identified appropriate staffing and capacity to implement the project, and then make sure that what they plan to do would be an eligible activity. So it's a first look at a project application. The notice of intent to apply was made available yesterday. And the Community Development Department will have workshops, virtual workshops for anyone who's interested in submitting that application. There's 2 opportunities for a workshop for any questions that you may have to walk through that application. And that is January 14th and January 15th. The notice of intent to apply will be due on January 25th. And again, those workshops, we highly encourage anyone who's interested to attend those workshops so that we can walk through it with you. And if you have any questions, they can get answered at that time. The next part of the process would be for any applicants, for all applicants that we can move forward with, we would encourage them then to submit a full application, request for proposals application. That would be available February 10th. And the applications would be due on February 28th. The actual recommendations will be released to the public the investment recommendations of projects that we would recommend the City Commission consider investing in would be released on March 19th. And that starts a 30-day public comment period that would conclude on April 19th. During that time, we would also present those recommendations publicly to the City Commission at their Committee of the Whole meeting on March 23rd. And there would also be, similar to the HCD plan, a public hearing in front of the City Commission, which is anticipated to be scheduled for April 13th. In conclusion of that process, it's anticipated that once we work through that entire process, which takes a significant amount of time, we would come to the City Commission on April 27th for them to make final decisions on those outcome investments or recommended investments. Next slide, please. If there are any agencies or parties that are interested in applying for the neighborhood investment plan and believes that they have projects that would fulfill at least one of those 8 outcomes that we described, there are links to the notice of intent to apply, the virtual workshops, as well as the actual notice of intent to apply application that can be found on the community development website at www.grcd.info. And if there's any questions related to the workshops, the investment, the notice of intent to apply, the investment process in general, please contact the community development department through our email address or by calling 616-456-3677. And that is all I have related to our housing and community development draft plan and our neighborhood investment funding process. Mr. Manager, did you have anything to add to that?
Nothing further, Connie. You did an outstanding job covering that. If we could, Mayor, I know that before we get into question and answer, there's another part of the presentation we wanted to provide a little bit more update on the context of what's been happening with our unhoused community. So we can pause now and ask questions about the plan, then come back and give the update on what's happening in the hearts of. So how would you like us to proceed, Mayor?
Yeah, City Manager, we finish up this portion before we move on, and I'll start one. Connie, I appreciate, maybe we can take the presentation down just for a moment. So, Connie, I want to say how much I appreciate all your work, and as well as the partnership that we have with the county with this plan, and the work that's been done to get community input and moving this forward. And then, Commissioners, I know I've reached out to some of you. Similar to years past, I am going to ask 3 of you to step up to work as a subcommittee in partnership with Connie through this process before it comes back to us in April. And so I'll switch it up this year, and I've asked Commissioner Jones, Commissioner Moody, and Commissioner O'Connor to serve on the subcommittee this year, and give the 3 of you who did it last year a little bit of a break. And I know you've done it, some of you, for a couple of years in a row. So we'll give others an opportunity. So I appreciate the 3 of you for your willingness to do that and to work with Ms. Bohat before things come back forward to us after the applications have been submitted. But I'll open it up now for any questions or comments specific to the plan. I know there's many of us have worked through this multiple times in the past, so we're familiar with the process, but I'll open it up to see if there's any questions or comments. All right, seeing none, Connie, I'll ask you to just keep us updated, and then again, I appreciate the subcommittee who will be spending extra time with you on this. All right, City Manager, I'll turn it back to you then to give us an update on our homeless outreach efforts.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And so I think what you'll have seen this morning is both the long-term approach to a very complicated, challenging issue around housing that we've been working on a long time in this community. And we know, in addition to the federal funding, there are a lot of partners in the community that are working with us to increase housing supply, and we'll be talking more about that. But in addition to the long-term challenges, we have near-term issues that have presented itself during COVID, during these very challenging times. And to add to the complexity, it's challenging for us in the Midwest, because in addition to the pandemic, we also have other environmental things that we have to mitigate against for our unhoused community. So what I'd like to do now is to have Ms. Bohaj, if she could bring up her screen and give a summary update that was the work of many partners in both within the organization, outside the organization, to the Network 180 Charter and Guiding Light around addressing unhoused community members, as well as providing for the public an update. And I'm getting some feedback at this point, but where they can find a document that gives a written summary of our effort around our most recent issues to address the need for additional emergency sheltering. So I will turn it over to Ms. Bohaj.
Thank you. So in essence, the homelessness work group, which is part of our emergency operations center framework, continues to convene, continues to support initiatives that focus, including the our homeless outreach team efforts, the geographically targeted homeless outreach project which is a rehousing effort on Monroe Center with community builders. The group continues to support issues related to expanded shelter operations and consideration of COVID-19 relief funds as they become available. And so this team, convenes, and really it's cross-departmental and convenes to really target and focus on issues as they come up, as well as trying to be more proactive in some of our approaches. There's been a lot of attention related to the Hartside Park and efforts there to ensure that folks in that park were able to transition to some safer conditions as we had to close, take efforts to close, or I should say, to eliminate the camping that was occurring in that park. During that time, there was multiple weeks of outreach that occurred with social service partner organizations. I should mention that there's a link here, I'm sorry, that there is a memo that was prepared by Ms. Tammy Britton, who is our homelessness coordinator, our interim homeless coordinator, and James Hurt, Managing Director of Public Services, that outlined what occurred during that time frame. And there was multiple weeks of outreach by city staff, the HOT team, and in coordination with our partners at social service organizations in advance of that effort, really working to try to help transition folks into safer conditions. During that time in December, the health department made an assessment in terms of the conditions that were very unsanitary and dangerous, along with our assessment of the weather conditions that were coming, that were in front of us in terms of Michigan winter. We were working for quite some time with shelter providers in preparation for winter and transitioning folks out of the unsheltered environment, making sure that there were ample shelter beds available in the community, making sure that there were opportunities for persons with all types of needs to be safely sheltered during that time. There's been there was concerns about those who are couples not having appropriate shelter, transgender populations, and other individuals and families who may not feel comfortable in traditional shelter. During this process, our shelter providers really worked hard to make sure that those needs could be met in either making accommodations within the new winter shelter or at their existing locations as a result of this expansion for the facility that came online at Purple East. During that time frame of the transition of actually enforcing then the no camping rule at Hartside Park, There was voluntary compliance. There was no arrests made. I think there might have been concerns about people being forcefully removed from the park. That did not occur. The city really worked in consideration of CDC guidelines in terms of making sure in its evaluating those guidelines and taking into context all of the conditions are surrounding the circumstances of a very densely populated small area and the sanitary conditions and again the weather conditions. So making sure that all that was taken into consideration and while that work was occurring. Really trying to do it in a caring and compassionate way, again, with the help of our service providers in the community and street outreach coordinators from various organizations who, for many weeks, were making contact with individuals who had been living there for some time. We also made sure that any unclaimed materials of value have been held in a city location and are being stored so that folks could have up to 30 days to come and claim those. We also then, I think in this memo, it highlights a variety of housing and homelessness initiatives that the city has invested in. I think the information on here is a little bit more, is summarized in a way that would highlight approximately $2 million of CARES Act funds that the city has in the last year used to support homelessness services, rapid rehousing, and sheltering alternatives, and invested more than $1 million of general operating funds to support the Homeless Outreach Team, Network 180 Partnership, as well as the winter shelter expansion. And there's a variety of new investments that are included in this memo as well.
Thank you, Ms. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Bohach, for summarizing that. You did a good job of summarizing our efforts. And Mayor, at the forefront was the health and safety of those persons that were in the park. As Ms. Bohach indicated, there were very concerning conditions that were confirmed by the Kent County Health Department that we did not have that report at the time of our last city commission meeting, but since then it was confirmed that the conditions were inhabitable, substandard, and were not sustainable by the city. We could not be able to maintain. We tried several times to remedy and maintain that park, and were unable to do so. And our worst fears was what has been realized recently in one of our neighboring communities in Lansing, that we would have a very unfortunate incident that I did not want any fatalities in the park that would occur as a result of unsafe conditions. We have enough issues now occurring in our city with violence and the number of murders that we're having, that we wanted to do as much as possible to mitigate that happening in our city. And that was our concern, the health and safety and welfare. And again, we followed the guidance of CDC, but also the guidance of other matters of safety that would help us to make a final determination of the ultimate safety conditions in the park. And so with that, I'll pause and see if you have any questions. I'll also ask Mr. DeLong if he has anything else to add that I may have missed.
Mark, I don't have anything to add, Mr. City Manager, so I will help respond to questions. It was a good summary by both you and by Ms. Bohach.
Thank you, City Manager and Ms. Bohach. I'll open up for questions. I'll start just by saying that this has been obviously a really challenging and heartbreaking situation in our city. And we know that the pandemic has exacerbated the issue related to homelessness as well as housing security. And I really appreciate our partners that we've been able to work with to provide additional shelter space that's safe and clean, particularly as we want to make sure that individuals don't get exposed to COVID. And it really has been a joint effort in partnership with nonprofit organizations as well as the county, not just recently, but also all last year as the pandemic moved forward and the state of emergency was put in place back in March. So a lot of work has been done in this space, both here in the city, but also at the county and with our nonprofit partners. And so I just want to really thank them for their efforts. And we know that this is a significant issue in our community, and we have a lot of work to do. And I think you'll see that moving forward, not just with us, but also with our county partners and within the nonprofit and really private sector as well. So thank you for that update. I'll open it up for questions. I know we all received a copy of the memo, which was very detailed and addressed some of the concerns that were brought to our attention. And as Ms. Bohatch said, some of those concerns were not accurate. Some of the statements were not accurate. So I appreciate that information being shared, not just with us, but with the broader community so that they are aware of what was done and what was not done, and our intent and commitment to moving forward in the most compassionate way possible. Commissioners, any questions or comments for City Manager or Ms. Bohatch? All right, seeing none, I'll just end by saying thank you again. I know a lot of the city staff have been working really hard on a number of issues, and I just really appreciate that. As we come into the new year, we have a lot of work to do, not just on issues related to housing, but also on public safety and a whole host of other things that we talked about when we were together for our planning retreat. And I know the city manager is following up on those with city staff, and we'll continue to work hard to move forward and really look at solutions, even though we likely are going to be facing some fiscal stress. I'm still hopeful for some state or federal support, but there's quite a bit of work to do to get us there. So any final comments as we adjourn? Commissioner Ruppert?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just do want to say that, you know, I've watched situations like what unfolded at Hartside Park happen many times over the last, 20 years that I've been working in that space. And in some ways we're using a new muscle. We're trying to do it differently than we've done it in the past. And so I'm really thankful for the staff's effort to try a new way of addressing something like what was happening at Hartside Park in the moment. And with all things, when you try it, I've recognized from staff and my conversations with them that they are fully committed to debriefing to figure out how we can do it even better the next time. And so, but really what happened in the last, month was a really short-term solution for addressing things that were happening immediately before winter. And, that's all necessity, and there's a delicate dance that needs to be done with that. And again, we need to hear feedback and make adjustments and plan differently, because I do think that we did it differently this time than we have in the past. But I am looking forward to having a homelessness coordinator within the city of Grand Rapids that we can sit down with, and they can convene people, and they can sit down with all of the folks who are concerned about that community and try to find long-term solutions. And looking forward to that conversation. Very encouraged that we've taken, I've been on the commission for 3 years, and we invested more on this issue this year by tenfold. And so I'm encouraged with the direction that we're heading, and looking forward to moving past the short-term kind of Band-Aid fixes to the long-term solutions. But I do want to give thanks to the city staff for their thoughtfulness in addressing the situation, but also their willingness to debrief and to recognize things that could go better the next time around when we have to deal with something like this. And so I think that those conversations are ongoing about how we can continue to improve how we do this kind of outreach.
Thanks, Commissioner. I think that's absolutely accurate, and I've been a part of those conversations as well, as I know many of you have. So we have a lot of work before us. All right, commissioners, with that, I'm going to close our committee of the whole. We'll be back together tonight at 7. Just as a reminder, EDPT was canceled, so that should be off your schedules. And then tonight we do have a number of public hearings, and I'll go ahead and collapse the few. We have 3 related to the same project, so I'll collapse those if it's okay with all of you, and we'll plan on 3 scheduled public hearings in addition to the other 2. So with that, enjoy your afternoon, and I'll see you in a few hours.